All right, PBL Simplified audience, you are in the right spot again. We've got a leadership guest episode today, and I've got Pete on here today, who is a teacher. He's been teaching for 24 years. He's also an author. He's a coach. He's a blogger. Pete's been looking at better performance for whoever's in front of him. And he does this through soccer. He's got a huge love and passion for soccer, and he's used that to write this book called Setting and Scoring Financial Goals. So we're mixing soccer, we're mixing finance. I think you're going to love today's episode. Pete, thanks for being on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so Pete, we start with the same question with every guest on the podcast, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is. So, what is your why for your work?
Basically, if you break me down to my core, and you looked inside of me, you would see that the reason I'm on this planet is to help people. It's why I became a teacher. It's why I became a father. It's, all of the things that I do basically get broken down into I'm looking to help people. And that's what I do through coaching. And the books are probably the most apparent of the things that I do that, all right, I'm not a finance person per se. I'm a coach who's looking for a place where I can help, where I see there's a need. And
Mm.
that is just something that is a through line in basically every single thing that I do, on daily basis and then on bigger projects like
Right. So you're in the right profession, right? Like
that.
you get
The
to do this.
selflessness of teachers. Yes, that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
what we
right.
do.
Right. I always say like teaching is not a gig, right? It's a passion. It's what you do. It's who you are, right? You get to share
Yeah.
that with,
It,
whatever
it,
kids are in front of you.
it's the first job, when I was in high school, college, whatever, I had many jobs from garbage man to pizza delivery guy and everything like that. And every single job I ever had, I knew how much money I was making every single minute that I was working. Teaching is the only job that I couldn't figure it out because the hours are so, so
Right.
strange. And then also, the thing is like this just feels like, I'm doing who I am.
Mm.
And every 2 weeks a paycheck just happens to show up. I'm just
Yeah.
being me and
Right.
doing what I would normally do anyway. So it's a really nice kind of setup that I get to do something that I really care about and money shows up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, now you've got it in book form too, right? So you get to do this every day in real life, whether you're coaching or you're teaching Spanish, like whatever that looks like. Now you've put it in book form, right? And that
Hmm.
we've had several podcast episodes actually about teachers writing books and what that process looks like to have a full-time teaching job, right? And write a book. So the the grind that can be, but also the labor of love.
Hmm.
So, but this particular book, tell us a little bit about it and why is it so important right now?
So the book kind of as I told you before, it kind of came into fruition during the pandemic. My best friend is a financial planner. He's my co-author, and basically I was having some discussions about my own finances, and I was thinking about, all right, well, who could I talk to about this that'll like really give me the nitty gritty? And I was like, well, my best friend's a financial planner. I think that only makes sense for me to go to him first. And as we were talking through some of the financial concepts, I was like, all right, well, this is like watching paint dry. How could I make this more interesting? And we played soccer together in college. So I was like, all right, well, how does this relate to soccer? Because that could, kind of hold my attention just a little bit longer. And as we started talking about it, it was, well, if I can understand these financial concepts a little bit better because of the fact that I'm relating it to soccer, well, that could definitely work for somebody else because a lot of people are intimidated by the world of finance because of the fact that, it seems like such high stakes and, you don't want to make mistakes, but also we have bad habits around money and everything like
Yep.
that. So the idea of taking something that people are really passionate about and coupling it with something that people are intimidated by and trying to simplify it through the metaphor of soccer, it just made the most sense in the world to me. And it's a really important book now because of the fact that we've had such a tumultuous time over the past, depending on how far back you want to go, the last couple decades, where the financial world has kind of gotten turned on its head from time to time. And it's not something that we teach in schools, generally speaking. I know
Mm.
there are certain school systems that have financial literacy courses and everything like that. But usually it's parents who are teaching their kids about finances. And a lot of times the parents are just trying to figure it out, or they're continuing on a series of bad habits that their parents gave to them. So it's a educational situation where a kid can walk in knowing nothing and possibly pick up enough to get themselves going in the right direction. Our book is not by any stretch of the imagination perfect financial advice. It's actually the thing that we keep on going back to is the decision making process is up to you. It's very
Yeah.
similar. I don't know if you're a soccer guy at all, but soccer is a player's game where everybody on the field, it's not like the coach is calling a play and saying, you must go here and you must go there. Everybody's making a decision that benefits or hurts the team at large. So the situation is everybody's making decisions all over the place. And that's what you have to do in your financial world is you've got to make the decisions and you're kind of living with the consequences of those decisions.
Yeah, that's so good, Pete. And I love the idea of it now. And uh, anytime that you can combine the engagement of something else, whether it's sports or art, and then you can bring in this other like deep learning, like project-based learning, that's a big piece that we do, right? And we've got this big overall goal that we're trying to achieve. And then we're gonna tackle all these academic standards, but also all these employability skills just because they're good for life. Like when I look at my Facebook feed and I have all these former students that are on here and now they're getting apartments and they've got jobs or new jobs, like everybody has to do finances, right? Like it's got to happen. And I think you're right that, you know, while I think schools are starting to catch up to have this, practical finance course, like everybody has to have this, right? It can't be just the students that are going to go do accounting in college, right? Everybody's going to need to use math. So I think our PBL audience that's listening right now is like, this is something I'd like to tackle, right? They want to bring this into their PBL units. They want to bring this into their school because it helps our learners be successful. So I think this vehicle that you've created through the book and this metaphor of soccer, I think there's a whole segment of learners that can be reached this way, right? Even if I'm a basketball player, like I still get the soccer, metaphor. And there's some students that we know are not going to be necessarily reached by this book. But I think teachers are always doing the puzzle, right? Like, how do I engage this section? How do I engage here? How do I do this? So I
Yep.
love it.
And
Yeah,
and
go.
ultimately what we're going to be doing is soccer was just the first book because it's where
Yeah.
our passion is. The number two book is American football. The third
Yeah.
one is going to be basketball. Baseball is next, and it's just a progression of we're going to tick off the major sports in order to, oh, you're a kid who likes soccer, great, we've got the book for you. You don't like soccer, you like football, here's the book for you. So that if we were eventually to get to the point where we're reaching into a school system where it's okay, I've got a class that I'm teaching and some of the kids care about soccer, some of the kids care about football. You've got something for each and every one of them rather than you've got to fit into the square peg or you've got to be a square peg in the square hole that we've created here.
Yeah, but like this is your passion and your love, right? So I think you just run with that. And if you're listening right now, and this isn't typically our listener, but if you're listening and thinking, man, I can't believe they're doing sports. What about art? And write the book, right? Write the art book that does this, right? Like jump into it. Like this is Pete's world, and I think you just maximize what you do best. And so when
Yep.
you think about this book, like what's the biggest takeaway that you want a learner to take away from this book?
Uh, Basically, I want to take away the fear factor
Uh,
for young people especially. I think that people have a tendency to get daunted by finance. They think the problem is too big, or just creating like good habits where there used to be fear. It's one of the first chapters or sections of the book is called Possession, Not Possessions. And again, not sure who's a soccer player or not, but a few years ago, Barcelona was the team in the world. They were, lauded as one of the best ever. And basically, the reason why, and Man City is now coached by their former manager, is they keep the ball 80 to 90% of the time. They have the ball more than anybody. And that's the idea that we talk about is it's possession, not possessions. Now it's okay to spend money on things. You want to spend money on, and that makes you happy. That's completely fine. But the idea is know where the ball is going. We use, your money as the ball as a metaphor for your money. And basically the idea is if you're going to give the ball away to the other team, that's your choice, but know when you're doing that and why you're doing that. And if you're giving the ball away 90% of the time, as opposed to keeping it 90% of the time, well, then you've got to figure out whether or not that's the right thing for you. And I think that a lot of people just get stuck in their habits of I've done it this way forever, and so therefore I'm going to keep doing it that way. And hopefully this just jolts them out of the fear of I can't understand what how to make my money work for me and things like that, and now giving them a conduit for getting out of some of those bad habits.
Yeah, so good. Because I think habits is an important piece as well for our learners, because like you said, especially financially, we tend to just get those from our parents, right? So
Hmm.
whatever they did, that's what we do, and we think that's normal. And so this other point of view, anytime you're taking away fear, I'm also a huge fan of that, right? Like giving us a concrete way to look at money a different way. It's such a
Hmm.
big deal for our learners as we're showing them new opportunities that maybe they haven't seen before. One of those is money a lot of times, right? And how you deal with money, because it can be so different and can change the trajectory of your life, right? Which is why we're in this profession. So,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of habits is, is so important. And you mentioned it before. It's like we're myelinated on. I mean, I'm sure you get into all the brain science at some point
Right.
with your listeners and stuff like that. Is if you've got this myelinated habit of I always, after I get my paycheck, I always go out and, buy myself something new because of the fact that like that's just what my parents did, or that's just what makes me feel good and everything like that. And just having that conscious thought of, all right, is this what is actually good for my financial well-being, and making possibly a new decision or keeping your old decision, but understanding better why it is that you're doing it rather than just this is what I've always done. So, we fire and wire together. And one of the things that I really want people to understand is money is not the end goal. Money is just portable power. It's,
Mm.
it gives you the ability to either purchase things or experiences or whatever. A lot of people say, oh, I want a lot of money. Well, why? You really want pictures of dead presidents? No, it is the things that you can get from that. And eventually, when you break it all down, it's all an emotional play anyway. We are all looking to have some kind of emotional experience. All right, you don't want to buy a house just to have a building. It's like all the feelings that come along with it. So
Yeah. Super good. So, Pete, I've got a couple more questions for you, just to tease some things out of you as we're thinking about that book. What's the best advice that anyone's ever given you?
regarding finances or just in
Yeah,
general.
I think just in general, it's sometimes it's nice. I think for me, I like to just know a little bit more about the author, right? When
Hmm.
I'm looking at a book. So like, I might go research James Clear, like, because I love Atomic Habits, right? So I just
Yeah.
started watching everything by James Clear just so I can know more about him. I'm a big fan of
Hmm.
John Acuff. So it's like I just start to know the author a little bit. And I feel like it lets me know the book a little bit more.
Yep. Probably, the simplest answer is advice that my dad gave me when I was a little kid, and it was kind of annoying because he repeated it so many times. It's, be nice to people. It doesn't cost you anything, but it can get you everything. I think that's probably the piece of advice that has been the most practical throughout my entire life, and I think it kind of led into my why of helping people and stuff like that. So I think if the very very simple answer is probably that one, just because of the fact that it's been so long standing, and I can't say that it's ever really steered me wrong. It may not
Yeah.
have worked out the way that I anticipated, but for the most part, I can't say that it's ever really been bad advice.
Yeah, that's good. For me, I just like the idea that the dad advice that I'm giving my kids is going to sink in, and right, they'll use it someday. So I'll take that encouragement.
Exactly.
So, Pete, as a true soccer guy, I love that the next book is going to be American football, right? Not just football. So you've got to differentiate because you're a soccer guy. What are the other books that are coming out? You kind of mentioned them. Are they all going to be finance related? And just talk a little bit more about those as they're coming out?
Yeah, so within the work that I'm doing with my co-author Chris Schaefer, we're doing the sports finance thing. We actually our LLC is Finance LLC because of the fact that we knew we went in with the idea of we're going to start with the soccer book and then we're going to differentiate to the other sports. Me personally, I've already written two books, and they were both soccer related. The first one was Fill Your Boots. I wrote that years ago. Second one was Soccer Life Balance. And they're all intended at high school age, college age students. And basically, the overall premise of me and the books is always, I'm looking to help younger people not step in that pothole that I stepped in 5 times. And so, I have other book projects that I'll be working on, independent of what Chris and I are doing, but ultimately the next thing is the American football book. And it's not a situation that, I am less enthusiastic about that project. Actually, my brother is an American football coach, who he played college soccer, but he actually coaches football now. But the concept is actually not all that different, and that's why we're doing that one second, because of the fact that, historically speaking, if you want to look at it this way, American football is the grandson of soccer. So basically in England they had the kicking game, and then this guy decided 150 years ago that he was going to pick the ball up and run with it. And that's now the sport that we know as rugby. But they were still calling it football. And a bunch of people who emigrated to the United States were still calling it football at that point. That's how we got the sport that we have, is rugby. Eventually, they started passing the ball forward. And that's how we got American football. So ultimately, the two sports are not that dissimilar. So I am very excited about doing that next project because of the fact that I think that, as much as I love soccer and I think that it'll have a huge impact, the American football one, I think, will hit on a much larger scale
Sure.
to people who really need it.
Right. Yeah. So good. Yeah. You've got such a great niche. Finance is a huge, important piece for all of our learners, even if they don't know it yet, right? Because they're going to be adults. They're going to have expenses. They're going to have income at some point. So we need to find engaging ways to get it out to them. So I appreciate the vehicles you're creating that our visionary leaders that are listening right now can use in their schools.
Mhm.
So, Pete, as these books come out, we want to stay connected. So, what's the best way for our audience to connect with you?
Basically, the website is sportsfinancellc.com. That is probably the easiest way to go about it because of the fact that that's where all the books will be. It's on Amazon and everything like that. But our website is a home for all of our resources and everything like that. And then we're on Instagram and Facebook for, Instagram for the younger generation, Facebook for the older generation.
Yeah, there you go. You're everywhere. So that's perfect. Pete, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your heart so we could hear what the author has to say and what's behind this book, right? It's not just an outline, it's a passion project. So thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate it.
All right, visionary leader, you heard yet another resource that you can use in your PBL classrooms, your PBL schools to reach your learners in a different way. In this particular case, we've got a way that we can look at finance in a different way. And we know that that engagement can really open up eyes for our learners. And I'm sure you're thinking of ways already to bring it into a PBL unit. And we just hope that this podcast has helped you move the ball down the field and I guess keep possession of it. So as you do that, you will engage your learners, tackle boredom, and transform your classrooms. So go lead inspired.